What if the afternoon crashes? The dependency on caffeine, the feeling of running on empty by midday, are problems the ancient world simply didn't have. And the reason why has been sitting in plain sight for 3,000 years. Across 5,000 years of ancient secrets, from the Himalayas to the Arctic Circle, from the banks of the Nile to the fjords of Scandinavia, 7 practices kept turning up. In different languages, in different medical traditions, with different names, all producing the same result: human beings who didn't run out of energy. Today, I'm going to show you the ancient secrets for natural energy, validated by peer-reviewed research from Stanford University, the National Institutes of Health, and journals including Sports Medicine and the Journal of Integrative Medicine. These aren't wellness trends. They are the daily energy practices of civilizations that built extraordinary human beings without a single cup of coffee. And they left the record. You'll be surprised with secret number 7. If you want ancient secrets about healthy life and longevity, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. Secret 1. Shilajit, the black resin of the Himalayas. That ancient India called the destroyer of weakness. 3,000 years ago, Ayurvedic physicians in ancient India documented a substance unlike anything else in their medical texts. They called it Shilajit, a Sanskrit compound meaning, roughly, conqueror of mountains and destroyer of weakness. It was found seeping from the rock faces of the Himalayas, a black, tar-like resin formed over centuries through the compression of organic plant matter. And the Vedic healers who discovered it weren't collecting curiosities. They were solving a problem. In the Charaka Samhita, one of the foundational texts of Ayurvedic medicine, compiled approximately 300 years BC, Shilajit is classified as a rasayana, a rejuvenator. Specifically, a substance that restores physical vigor and eliminates fatigue at the root. What no ancient physician could explain was why it worked at the cellular level. That required modern biochemistry. Shilajit's 2 primary bioactive compounds are fulvic acid and humic acid, naturally occurring molecules formed through the same geological compression process that creates the resin itself. Fulvic acid has been shown in mechanistic studies to directly enhance the efficiency of mitochondria, the organelles in every cell responsible for converting oxygen and nutrients into adenosine triphosphate, the body's fundamental energy currency. Humic acid accelerates electron transfer along the mitochondrial electron transport chain, which is the specific biochemical process by which ATP is actually produced. A 2025 pilot study registered with the Clinical Trials Registry and published in PMC found that Shilajit resin supplementation supported mitochondrial bioenergetics and antioxidant activity in healthy adults, validating the traditional classification of this substance as a physiological energy restorer rather than a stimulant. That distinction matters. Shilajit does not mask fatigue the way caffeine does by blocking adenosine receptors. It targets the mitochondria, the machinery that produces energy to begin with. The Vedic physician who climbed the Himalayas to collect this resin and prescribed it for weakness and fatigue had no concept of the electron transport chain. He had a 3,000-year medical tradition built on careful cumulative observation, tracking what happened to the people who took it and what happened to those who didn't. Secret 2. Rhodiola rosea, the Arctic root. In the frozen highlands of Siberia, where winter temperatures drop to conditions that would be lethal for most organisms, a small flowering plant grows out of rock. The indigenous peoples of Siberia and Scandinavia discovered it centuries ago and built it into the pharmacopoeia of survival. Viking warriors carried it on long sea voyages. Siberian hunters used it before expeditions into terrain where physical failure meant death. In China, Rhodiola rosea was prized enough that emperors reportedly sent special expeditions to collect it from the Altai Mountains. 3 geographically and culturally separate civilizations, with no documented contact, arrived at the same plant and the same application, sustained physical and mental energy under extreme conditions. Modern pharmacology has since mapped the mechanism with precision. Rhodiola belongs to a pharmacological class called adaptogens, substances that modulate the body's stress response rather than overriding it. Where stimulants force energy output by flooding the brain with excitatory signals, Rhodiola works by blocking the enzymes that degrade dopamine and serotonin under stress, preserving the neurotransmitter environment that makes sustained physical and mental performance possible in the first place. It also suppresses the rise of cortisol and stress-activated protein kinase that normally follow exhaustive effort, meaning the energy crash that follows exertion arrives later, is shallower, and recovers faster. A systematic review published in the Journal of Integrative Medicine confirmed these mechanisms across multiple human studies, with randomized controlled trials showing significant reductions in fatigue and measurable improvements in mental performance under sustained stress, the exact conditions under which the ancient world needed it to work. The Viking who packed this route before crossing the North Atlantic wasn't following a wellness trend. He was applying a pharmacological tool that his civilization had identified through generations of empirical observation, tested in conditions where the cost of being wrong was measured in lives. 2,000 years of empirical Arctic survival data, multiple randomized controlled trials, the same conclusion. Secret 3. Morning sun exposure. The energy ritual built into the architecture of every ancient civilization. The priests of ancient Egypt's great solar city of Heliopolis rose before dawn and faced east, not as a spiritual gesture alone, as a medical prescription built into the very architecture of civilization. The pharaohs were required to greet the sunrise. Temples were oriented to receive it. The Vedic tradition prescribed the Surya Namaskar, the sun salutation, to be performed at the precise moment of sunrise, not before, not after. The Greeks honoring Helios, the Romans honoring Sol Invictus, the Aztecs constructing entire pyramids to track the moment of dawn with engineering precision. Every major ancient civilization built morning sunlight exposure into its sacred daily practice, enforced simultaneously by religion, medicine, and architecture. What none of them could articulate was the energy mechanism. That required modern chronobiology. Morning light, specifically within the first 30 to 60 minutes after waking, activates specialized cells in the retina called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, which signal the brain's suprachiasmatic nucleus, the master biological clock that governs the entire body's hormonal rhythm. A systematic review published in PMC confirmed that morning light exposure of any spectral composition produces measurable increases in cortisol secretion compared to dim light conditions, and cortisol, contrary to its reputation as a stress hormone, is the body's primary morning energy mobilizer. When this cortisol awakening response fires correctly and on schedule, it delivers a natural surge of alertness, metabolic activation, and physical readiness that peaks within the first few hours of the day. When it doesn't, because the morning light signal never arrived, the entire hormonal energy cascade runs late, dim, or dysregulated. The consequence is what modern life calls an energy crisis. The ancient world didn't have one. Their religion made morning sunlight non-negotiable. The Egyptian priest who turned east at dawn had no concept of the suprachiasmatic nucleus. He had a 4,000-year medical tradition that had observed what happened to people who greeted the morning light and what happened to those who pulled the curtains. Modern chronobiology spent decades building the instruments to explain what ancient civilization had already institutionalized. Secret 4. Cold water immersion. The ancient energy technology hidden in plain sight. The Spartans immersed their children in the cold waters of the river Evrotas from birth. Roman public baths featured the frigidarium, a cold plunge pool, as a required stop in the bathing circuit, not an optional one. The Japanese misogi purification ritual, documented for over 1,000 years, involved immersion in cold rivers and waterfalls specifically at dawn. The ancient Egyptian medical text known as the Edwin Smith Papyrus, dating to approximately 3,500 BC, contains the earliest recorded reference to cold therapy. 5 civilizations. No shared language. No shared medical tradition. All arrived at the same daily practice across thousands of miles of separation. That degree of convergence demands an explanation. Modern science has since identified a mechanism for cold exposure and natural energy that most people have never heard of. Brown adipose tissue, brown fat, is a type of fat fundamentally different from the white fat associated with weight gain. Brown fat is densely packed with mitochondria, and its biological function is to generate heat by burning fuel, a process called non-shivering thermogenesis. For decades, scientists believed active brown fat existed only in human infants and hibernating animals. A 2024 systematic review published in PMC, following PRISMA guidelines, confirmed what emerging evidence had been suggesting, that adults who engage in habitual cold exposure maintain functional brown adipose tissue, metabolically active, mitochondria-rich, and generating energy as heat. Cold water immersion doesn't just shock the body awake through norepinephrine release. It activates an energy-generating tissue that modern sedentary life leaves entirely dormant. Honest framing, the brown adipose tissue findings in human adults are robust but still developing in terms of clinical applications. The most rigorous cold immersion studies remain in early stages for specific health outcomes. But the convergence of the ancient record with the emerging mechanistic science is compelling. The Spartan mother who placed her child in cold water every morning wasn't being cruel. She was activating an energy system that her civilization had discovered through 2,000 years of deliberate practice, one that modern sedentary life switched off, and that modern metabolic science is only now switching back on. Secret 5: Fermented foods. The ancient energy secret hidden in every traditional kitchen. Walk into the kitchen of almost any ancient civilization, and you will find fermentation. Korean kimchi, documented for over 3,000 years. Japanese miso and natto, traced back more than 2,000 years. The fermented kefir of Central Asian nomadic cultures. The vinegar-based ferments of ancient Rome. The fermented fish sauces of Greece. The preserved vegetables of ancient China and the Middle East. Across civilizations on every continent, before refrigeration, before preservatives, before any understanding of microbiology, ancient peoples independently developed fermented foods and integrated them into the daily diet as fundamental to health and vitality, not as condiments, as medicine. The scientific explanation for why fermented foods specifically affect energy has only recently been established. A cross-sectional analysis of 2,353 older adults using NH Haynes data from 2021 to 2023 found a direct association between high-live microbe intake from fermented foods and significantly lower fatigue, mediated through short-chain fatty acid production and folate bioavailability. Short-chain fatty acids, produced when the gut microbiome ferments live microbial food sources, are now understood to be direct participants in cellular energy metabolism, not merely digestive byproducts. They support the gut-brain axis, influence mitochondrial function in immune cells, and regulate the systemic inflammatory burden that is one of the primary biological drivers of chronic low-grade fatigue. A Stanford University clinical trial published in Cell found that a high fermented food diet significantly increased gut microbial diversity and decreased markers of systemic inflammation in just 10 weeks. Inflammation is not merely an immune phenomenon, it is a metabolic tax. A chronically inflamed body is a chronically tired body. Most people associate fermented foods with digestive health. The ancient world prescribed them for vitality. Modern science has now established the biological pathway that connects the two. The Roman soldier who drank posca, a fermented vinegar and water blend, every day before a campaign wasn't following a culinary tradition. He was managing his energy system 2,000 years before anyone understood what a gut microbiome was. Secret 6: Structured daily movement. Aristotle's students were called the peripatetics, from the Greek for those who walk around, because Aristotle taught philosophy while walking, without exception, every day. Greek gymnasia were not optional leisure facilities. They were civic institutions. Every Greek city of significance built one. In ancient India, daily movement was classified in Ayurvedic texts as a therapeutic intervention, with specific prescriptions for duration, timing, and type, tailored to individual constitution. In ancient China, the practice of Qigong involved structured daily movement as a deliberate energy cultivation practice. The Roman legionary marched 20 miles a day carrying 40 pounds of equipment, and the Roman military medical tradition understood that soldiers who moved daily were soldiers who performed. Every ancient civilization that produced extraordinary human beings and left the medical and philosophical record built structured daily movement into the prescription for a functional life. The label was different in every culture. The biological outcome was identical. The reason is now understood at the molecular level. A 2024 systematic review and meta-analysis published in Sports Medicine confirmed what exercise physiologists have documented across decades. Repeated bouts of physical movement drive mitochondrial biogenesis, the literal multiplication of the mitochondria inside muscle and brain cells. More mitochondria means more cellular machinery dedicated to converting fuel into ATP. The body of a person who moves daily does not just burn more energy, it produces energy more efficiently, with more capacity, and with greater resilience to the energy demands of stress. Research published in Science Direct confirmed that aerobic movement specifically upregulates BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which activates the PGC1 alpha pathway, enhancing mitochondrial efficiency and increasing both ATP and NAD+ production simultaneously. These are not incidental effects of exercise. They are the primary molecular reason that daily movement civilizations produced people who had more energy than sedentary ones. The ancient world didn't have the language of mitochondrial biogenesis. It had the evidence of populations that moved every single day, and the observable difference between those populations and the ones that stopped. The science arrived millennia later. The result was already written in the record of every civilization that took physical daily movement seriously enough to mandate it. Let's keep going, because the last secret on this list is the one the ancient world practiced every single day without even thinking about it. And the moment modern civilization stopped, it created an energy problem it's been trying to solve with supplements ever since. Secret 7. Earthing. The oldest energy practice in human history that we only recently stopped doing. For the vast majority of human history, there was no question of earthing. It simply happened. Every human being walked barefoot on natural ground, slept close to the Earth's surface, sat and worked in direct contact with soil. The disconnection from the Earth, through rubber-soled shoes, elevated beds, insulated floors, is not ancient. It is entirely modern. But across the civilizations that did document their health practices, the connection to the earth was actively prescribed. In traditional Chinese medicine, earth was one of the 5 elements, and practitioners specifically prescribed barefoot walking and outdoor ground contact as part of healing routines. In Ayurveda, the Prithvi, the earth element, was understood as essential for physical strength and stability, with clay treatments and direct ground contact built into therapeutic practice. In ancient Greece, Hippocrates himself prescribed immersion in natural environments as a restorative practice. Indigenous cultures across every continent, the Lakota, the Maasai, the Aboriginal Australians, treated barefoot contact with the earth not as primitive necessity, but as deliberate practice with understood health consequences. Modern bioelectrical research has since identified a physiological mechanism that explains what these traditions observed. The earth carries a negative electrical charge. The human body, insulated by modern footwear and flooring, accumulates a positive electrical charge through electromagnetic exposure. Direct contact with the Earth's surface allows electrons to transfer into the body, And those electrons function as natural antioxidants, neutralizing the positively charged free radicals that drive oxidative stress and systemic inflammation. A randomized controlled trial published in Science Direct found that participants who were grounded experienced significant increases in energy and significant decreases in fatigue, tiredness, and depressed mood compared to sham-grounded controls, with effects still present at 1-month follow-up. A study published in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine found that 6 weeks of sleeping grounded normalized the 24-hour cortisol secretion profile in participants, realigning the body's hormonal energy rhythm from dysregulated patterns back to the natural day-night curve that produces alert mornings and restful nights. Research published in PMC confirmed that birthing shifts the autonomic nervous system from sympathetic dominance, the fight-or-flight state that chronically drains energy, toward parasympathetic regulation, with sustained effects observed with continued practice. Important framing. The grounding research base, while peer-reviewed and published, involves smaller sample sizes than the gold standard of large clinical trials. The electron transfer mechanism, while biologically plausible and measurable, is still an area of active scientific investigation. The energy and fatigue outcomes are the best supported clinical findings in this literature. But the history is unambiguous. The ancient world was grounded constantly by the simple fact of daily life. The modern world insulated itself from the earth and created a chronic energy deficit that it now spends billions of dollars trying to treat with stimulants and supplements. The Ayurvedic physician who prescribed barefoot walking on natural ground wasn't prescribing a spiritual ritual. He was prescribing a bioelectrical reset that his tradition had documented with careful empirical attention, and that modern research is only now building the instruments to measure. 7 secrets. Thousands of years of accumulated practice across civilizations that shared no language, no medical journals, no clinical trials, and no energy drink industry. And yet, independently, through careful daily observation across centuries, they identified the same fundamental truth: that the human body has its own extraordinary energy systems, and that specific daily practices activate them with a precision that no stimulant can replicate. Modern science did not discover any of this. It confirmed it, one peer-reviewed study at a time. And here is the question worth sitting with. These civilizations, without laboratories, without biochemistry, without electron microscopes or cortisol assays, identified the practices that generate natural energy in the human body with such accuracy that Stanford researchers, NIH scientists, and peer-reviewed journals keep arriving at the same conclusions. Drop a comment and tell me which secret surprised you most. I read every single one. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more ancient life secrets. We are just getting started.